All right, gang. All right, so welcome back to the Emerging Leaders Civic Advancement Training Program for Loaned Executives. This is our third and final class, the crash course we call it for you LEs. So good to see everybody. I think we saw most of you on the last call, but good to see everybody again. Let's go ahead and get started. So here's today's agenda. After our quick welcome, just wanted to review the number one goal for LEs, and then at a high level, just very quickly go through the 5 ECQs. And then the bulk of today is really the overview of the CFC resources and then developing your LE playbook. And then we'll go ahead and wrap up. And we won't need the full 2 hours. We'll get through this as quickly as we can, and we'll wrap up and have everybody on with your busy day.
All right. Thank you, James. So just as a reminder, when we talk about what that number one goal is, and in some places you'll see it called the ultimate goal, but each of our jobs, including James and me, and all of you, and then also our CFC coordinators, our job is to ensure that every federal employee is invited to give through the CFC. So as a reminder, right, we don't do coercion, but we want to invite people to participate. So if we make things exciting, if we promote, if we talk about goals, right, it might motivate individuals to get involved somehow. It might be coming to an event, might be stopping at a CFC table, might be for some of my accounts, they have a button that they wear or a sticker that says, ask me about the CFC on Fridays. They all wear the same t-shirt, right? But there's different ways where you can either visually or another way help identify folks who are key workers who are on the team. But all these individuals are part of the CFC Army, and they are trying to get individuals to get curious about, right? And it's a way to learn more about the CFC. And then if they understand the value of the CFC, they find it fulfilling, they find it beneficial to the community, then they're going to get involved. And so those are part of the things that we talk about what our role is that we are trying to do. So you may have seen this graphic. This is one we thought that would be helpful to just kind of throw up there. Oh gosh. Okay. So the loaned executive, I was trying to do something and it looks like I didn't change the filler on there. But if you see for the loaned executive, you are a senior federal employee who's loaned to assist. This is what's behind the blue block, loaned to assist with the combined federal campaign. So if you look at the hierarchy of things, there's an LFCC. And if you were on the call just with Antonia and company, just prior to this one, we were talking about these LFCC meetings that happen every single month. So every zone has this oversight group. But the loaned execs are like right underneath there. So you all have, because of your, I'm going to call it your designation within the federal government, et cetera, you actually know a lot. You're very valued, not only to the MP May team, but also just to the CFC in general. And so because you are senior and you know the insides and outs, the back, the things behind the curtain, you are actually essential in helping to make the CFC successful. And so then in addition to you all, we have a CFC chair, also a volunteer, campaign management coordinator, also a volunteer, right? And key worker, also a volunteer. So everybody here is a volunteer. They have a day job with the federal government, but they are taking extra time to work within the CFC. So when we think about that, we want to keep in mind that everyone is trying to juggle their day job and this work, but because the CFC is an employee benefits part of OPM, that gives us that ability to be able to invite everyone to participate in a way that perhaps other initiatives would not be able to benefit from. All right, so you've probably seen this too. This is what our loaned executives. So when you all were recruited and when you signed up to do this, you understood that this background of why the CFC is important. It's been around for more than 40 years. Actually, more than that. I guess it would be, what year are we in? More than 60 years, in 1961. And then you're going to be in service with us through the end of the campaign, through January 15th. You are in the middle. Well, actually, you're almost getting ready to complete this intensive training. And then you're soon going to launch into these accounts that you've been assigned. And so if you're not clear on what that is, you'll want to make sure that you talk with Antonia. But like Sherry I think Sherry joined us. We're looking to have a meeting with her, with James and me, because she's in Heartland. James and I are both co-leading the Heartland zone this year. And so she's essential to us to make sure that's successful. Tom is working with Heart of the Midlands. He's working with James very closely. So this is kind of what the handoff's going to look like for each of you. So if you've not had those meetings, we want to make sure you get those calendared. Disqualification, we just talked about it. You all are GS 9 through 12, like you're the cream of the crop. So again, very excited to have a chance to work with you in this role. Your primary responsibility. So if you haven't seen this in a while, you are going to be working with those senior organizational leaders, in part because you're GS 9 through 12. You have those relationships, you understand the protocol, the culture of these organizations. And so we're really leaning on you because some of our CFC coordinators do not have access to some of the senior leaders like you all do. And so we are dependent on you to help us with that. Guiding our agencies in terms of looking at their marketing strategy. So as James mentioned earlier, we're getting ready to launch these CFC trainings that we're doing for all the coordinators. One of the topics is marketing. So you want to make sure that we're going to offer it a few times, Zoom and Teams, both this month and also in October. But the earlier you can get it, and if you can do this round in September, that would be ideal, because your CFC coordinators are going to be leaning on you to help them kind of think through those marketing strategies, the detail of that, the planning of that, the execution of that. So if you can get that training along with everyone else, that would be super helpful so that you know the language we're using, the tips and tricks, where the resources are. You're also going to be advising the agencies on their campaign plans. So that marketing is just one element of it. If you look at that training that's launching here this week, again, it's events, it's about awards and reporting. It's also about, what am I missing, James? Marketing, events, reports. There's a fourth one that I can't remember right now. Anyway, that's also an important topic, the one that I can't remember. But you want to make sure that you sign up for all those too. And then you want to, you're going to serve as an advisor, not only on the planning stage, but then also the execution, right? And a lot of that does kind of rubber meets the road with the event planning. We are very heavy in events with CFC. Those can be in person, they can be hybrid, they can be virtual. And so that events training will help walk you through some of those ideas that you can, again, try to seed with some of your CFC coordinators. Conduct campaign worker training. So we know that is key worker training. James and I do a lot of key worker training this time of year. So again, some of those accounts, depending on how large or small they are, you may just be training a couple of people, but in some cases, like you may be assisting James or I at a key worker training where we have like up to 100 people. You know, I have some accounts that are just that large where I might have 50, 60 people. Like when I do Scott Air Force Base, I actually have to do multiple key worker trainings because they just have that many people that are working on that installation on the CFC campaign. So we may ask you to assist with that as well, or you may be doing that solo. So again, you'll want to talk with your account manager that you're assigned to understand what that looks like for y'all. Monitor organizational progress and recommend course corrections as necessary. So that training that we're going to go over again in that CFC training, it's called awards and reporting. But that reporting is going to go over the report that's going to start getting kicked out beginning the first week in October. So it is actually pulled from our database, and it will show number of pledges received, those that are paper, also online. It will show number of donors, so you can track how many donors did they have last year compared to this year. If the agency, the office gave us a goal, not all of them do, but we do encourage that. You can see how they are year to date to goal, and then how they are moving forward comparatively to years in the past, right? But that's something that is an instrument for us to be able to motivate, encourage, coach, right? And again, it's GS 9 through 12. And also, James covered some of those in his ECQ trainings. You know, hopefully that will help you work with your CFC coordinators, right, to kind of stay on track, because we don't want to wait till those last few weeks in the campaign, because it's really hard to catch up at that point if folks haven't been doing it all along. And then lastly, ensure recognition for campaign workers through the awards program. So again, in that CFC awards and reporting training, we'll talk about the Hero Awards. And then MP May also does some recognition for CFC coordinators as well. And so we'll talk about that too. All right, James, give us a quick overview on the ECQs.
Yeah, I'll be brief with this because we've already gone through 4 hours of content over the past couple weeks on this, but really OPM defines leadership really with these 5 ECQs, the executive core qualifications. And number one is leading change. Leading change really is all about general leadership. Okay. What does it take to be a leader? We went through that. Leading people, that's what we're doing with the CFC. So this is firsthand experience at leading people, connecting them to your vision and your plan, giving them the resources that they need to succeed, um, setting expectations and trying to do that in a positive, motivating way. That's what's really important about leading people, just keeping them motivated, keeping them inspired so they perform at the optimum level. The results oriented, the content we had was good on ECQ3, but to me, being in the business world, it's all about the results. And I've I'm famous for my quotes, but I used to always say to salespeople, I would tell them, hey, don't confuse effort with results. Okay, don't confuse efforts with results. You may be trying hard, but if we're not getting the results we want, we're still not effective. So it is all about the results. And that is a critical ECQ. The business acumen one, we went through that. The business acumen was, managing human capital, technology management. You kind of remember that. But it's, the tools and resources and the processes that we use in business or in operations. That was ECQ4. And then at a high level, building coalitions is really about partnerships and alliances. And us working with the LEs, it's a perfect example of an alliance where we all have the same goals in mind. We're, sharing different resources, but we need to understand what's expected of one another, build that plan and strategy so we can deliver optimum results, through the offices that we're working on together. So building coalitions and partnerships, that is really important. But again, back firsthand with what we're doing in the CFC, these nail it across the board with all 5 of these. Next slide.
All right, thank you, James. So again, remember, James calls it a crash course, and that is exactly what it is. I mean, we tried to introduce the 5 ECQs to you. Normally, we do this over a 5-week period, and it's twice a week. So we would have our participants on Tuesdays for an hour and then Thursdays for an hour. So essentially, we've tried to squeeze 10 hours worth of content into like 4 hours of ECQs. And then we've got today to just kind of do application. So it is a bit of a crash course, and hopefully the workbooks that you've been sent, you can kind of dive into the topics a little bit more. Certainly, we're making the slide decks available to you too. And then our person who does the recording, she's back this week. And so she's going to finish spooling the recordings and then upload those. And so we'll make these links available to you too if you want to rewatch any of the sessions. But it is a crash course. And I'm also wondering, James, I don't think it would not be beneficial. What I might do in this last email for you too is I might go ahead and just give you all the links that we had to ELCA when it ran the 10 weeks. So if you want to, so this is like the summary that you've been through the last couple weeks, but maybe also give you all the links for the full sessions that we did over the summer. So if there's any of those topics that James just gave you kind of a bird's eye view on, if you want to dive into any of those deeper, you would be able to benefit. So again, those would be optional to you, but we've already got those uploaded. So I think I'll also just provide this to you too, just as an additional resource. But again, just know that was like 10 sessions. It's a little bit longer, but you can speed up the playback if you want. All right. So now what we want to do, because I'm not certain how deeply you've gone into this, we'll go into these a little bit more when you do the CFC trainings, But again, those are supposed to be about 45 minutes. So I just wanted to spend a little bit of time here just to go into it a little bit more. So the Give CFC website is going to be your go-to, right? So when you're working with your CFC coordinators, when I work with them, this is the starting place that I always put them through. And so I'm actually going to stop sharing, if I remember how to do that. Stop share. Okay, and then I'm actually going to call up, I am going to share my screen and take you to the website, and we're going to do a little bit of website navigation. If you would like to do this alongside with me on your own screen, I encourage you to do that so you can kind of play around. But I want you to see two primary documents that, at least for me, I find the most helpful to walk my coordinators through. Are you seeing are
Yeah.
you seeing my screen here?
Yeah.
Okay. Why does this keep doing this? Here we go. All right, so you want to go to givecfc.org. There we go. All right, so when you're working with either a CFC coordinator, a donor, etc., I always take them here first. And you can see here that it's kind of a one-stop shop in terms of all things CFC. What for you all, what you'll want to make sure is that you're pretty well oriented to all the different tabs that there are. Because you can even see, if someone's not sure how to give, they've never set up an account on the website, this will tell them how to do it. If you can see where my mouse is, how to give, who can give. So it's going to cover whether you're a contractor, whether you're a federal employee, a retiree, right? These are all individuals who can still give through the CFC. I have some individuals who say, like, they just don't understand that the CFC is an OPM initiative and it's only for those who get paid through the federal government. So they're like at a garage sale or in front of the grocery store and they're trying to get the general public to give to the CFC. And I have to be like, well, no, first of all, like that, they don't even qualify to give through the CFC because they're not an employee. That's not appropriate. So these are things that are very important for you to understand as a loaned executive. And so this who can give is helpful just as a reminder. The retirees are growing in terms of the percentage of them contributing to the campaign and the percentage overall of our goals. So, anything that you can do to support like a retirement appreciation day, any sort of events with that, the retirees can certainly give. And we see those over time as they're retiring, those numbers of contributions are going up. Cause of the week, we can go over that here in a second. That is, we used to call it a cause of the week, like really pinning it to a week. This year we've changed it up so it's versatility. So I'll just use animal welfare as an example. In the past, we'll talk about this weekly email template here in a second. You would see the weekly email that was devoted to animal welfare, and it was for like week 4. What we've learned is that this is not a one size fits all. There are some offices where they want to run a 1-month campaign, others who want to run a 1-week campaign. My Scott Air Force Base is not going to leave any time on the table. They run a 15-week campaign. They go all the way through the end because they're huge, right? So when you do a cause of the week that locks you into like a week 12, but you're an organization that only did a 1-month campaign, that doesn't fit. So you really have to get to know what the plans are of your offices so that you can adjust so that they're able to benefit from the cause of the week email messages, that marketing, to what fits them the best. And what we can go over it briefly, but the CFC trainings that you'll be attending, those will go into it much more deeply. Virtual charity fair, that's still a thing. We know that a lot of offices are still running like an email online campaign. I have more that are doing more in person, but we don't want to do one or the other. I think we're still in that blended sort of environment, and it may be like that for a really long time, post-COVID. So here's some resources for you for there. Some charities have put videos together. They've uploaded them, so they're easy grabs for you to be able to provide links. Some of the charities are not going to be within your zone, and some of them might be national charities. So you'll want to go through and make sure what's appropriate before you just grab one and stick it in your zone. Because if I'm in St. Louis, and if I show something for Denver, and that's not a national charity, that doesn't keep the money local, and that's where most folks want, is to keep their money local. All right, and then finding a CFC charity. So you may or may not have heard the charity guides are running late on getting printed. And we also don't have a PDF version just yet to be able to share. So until the printed version or the PDF file that we can distribute electronically is available, this Find a CFC charity is your next best bet. Every charity that's been approved that donors can, I call it shopping for your charity, because you actually put those charities in your shopping basket, so to speak, when you complete your pledges. That's where you can direct them to. So you may want to find, you may want to spend some time just playing around, understanding it. Part of the limitations that we find with the search is, while to me it's still more helpful than flipping through all those pages, the charities self-identify with which category they fall into. And sometimes the donor thinks that the charity falls under a different category than the charity has actually registered for. So if you understand, I'm going to make this up, but like the American Red Cross. The American Red Cross sees themselves as a disaster relief, right? But the American Red Cross also does blood services, right? So that's health. So if I am thinking about the American Red Cross, but I think about them as disaster relief, but I don't know that they are under health because they also do the blood services, I can't find American Red Cross. And American Red Cross is signed up as a national organization, but they also have all of these local chapters. St. Louis, Kansas City, Denver, right? They all have these local chapters. So if my local American Red Cross in St. Louis has not signed up to be a CFC charity, and I go look for it and I can't find it, but I really want to go to the American Red Cross, I have to know to search for them nationally so that they show up, so that the donor can still give to the Red Cross. Right. So these are some of the nuanced things that, if you can spend some time understanding the charities and how that's set up in the database, that will also help you and offset some of that frustration while we're waiting for the charity booklets and also the PDF to be printed. Because when you do the PDF, you can do a Control F and they can find it very easily there. So you have 3 options, but right now we're still waiting on 2 of them to get produced. All right, let's go to for campaign workers. That's going to be a really key area for you. So just as a reminder, right, that goal that we talked about, it's even here on the front page. Your ultimate goal is to ensure that every federal employee is invited to give through the CFC. So again, we're not asking them, we're not soliciting them, right? We're inviting them to come to a virtual charity fair. We're inviting them to come to an event. We're inviting senior leaders to speak about the CFC, and we're inviting people to make sure that they go to that meeting so they can hear the senior leader speak. You're inviting them to watch a video. You're inviting them to read the weekly email, right? But you're inviting them. It's their choice whether they participate or not, and it's their choice whether or not they give or not. It's their choice whether they give one time or multiple times. And when I say multiple times, I've got offices that will do like a cakewalk, right? So back in the day when we could accept cash, you might be in an event and you would want to buy a cake. I would give you $10 for that cake and we'd be done. Can't do that anymore because we can't accept cash. So what happens then is the individual has to go into their CFC account, right? And then they have to honor system pledge another $10, right, to walk out with that cake from the cakewalk. That is a fundraiser for the CFC. That is permissible. You can do that. Can't transact with cash, but that's an example where you might have an individual where they've already made a pledge, but they're giving more. Can you maximize the video? Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, your font is super tiny, but
Okay.
we could do a little bit on our side too. I just trying to help Teddy
Okay.
figure out how to zoom in a little bit.
Okay. Thank you. Let me.
Yeah, I think that's why Allie wears glasses, because she has eagle eyes and
Yeah.
she can see the little super tiny font.
The super tiny font. Yeah, exactly. I'm doing isn't it like Control Plus?
Yeah, I think it's okay. It's the
Okay.
main thing I think you're really highlighting, and what I love about this site, and Allie, it's so smart of you to show this first, is that historically most of the assets were not up on the website. Us as a team, we would have to email or mail these materials to people, but most of the digital assets are all up on the main website now. And
Exactly.
it's most of them are going to be in the for campaign workers tab up on the
Yep.
top left, right
Right
where they're
here.
showing you.
Yeah. Thank you, James. So hopefully this helps your eyes a little bit. Um, this one worked when I did the Control Plus. But so these are 4 guides that are going to be super, super helpful for you. So if you can get to know them, right, this is going to be your best friend. So this campaign worker guide, I'm just going to flip to it. Tell me, do you see a PDF? It says give happy.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So if you do the same thing, right, you can download it. You can see it's 9 pages. But we love this thing because it's just kind of like a step-by-step sort of thing that will help you not only in your role, but then also when you are trying to figure out how to coach and support the CFC coordinators, right? But if you're working with them, again, where they should be now in the month of September is they should be recruiting their key workers, right? Because we want these key workers to be in place so that James, Allie, you all, the rest of our account managers can be out there in the field supporting and training these key workers. These are the people. So once upon a time, we would say the key worker ratio should be like 1 CFC key worker to 25 employees. I'll be honest with you, I'm not getting those ratios. It's like 1 key worker to 100 people. It's hard to get volunteers to work on the CFC, but these key workers are the field workers. They're like your front line of defense and offense in terms of getting the word out, inviting people. So we want to make sure that these individuals are on board so we can get them trained and they know what to do over the month-long campaign, the 15-week campaign, the 1-week campaign, whatever their office is going to do. Then we got to get them trained, right? And then this campaign plan, the hope is that the leader will have already done some designing. And at this point, it's feedback and you make tweaks and it's set. Decisions are made, we execute. And so we want to make sure then once we do that, the leadership understands what our plan is so that they can support and be an ambassador for that, right? And that they are visibly present at these opportunities as well. So again, read over this. There's do's and don'ts, really helpful guide. Here is how to inspire your coworkers. So again, these key workers who are on the ground doing the work, they're going to be responsible for getting this out in the field to their departments, their units. And so again, you're going to be on the other side, coaching, encouraging, following up, doing a little bit of monitoring, reminding, right, that they are doing these things to make their plan implementation successful. So again, tips and tricks. If you click on posters and flyers, like watch what happens when I click on that. Now it's going to take me to assets that are all digital. So if I need to get my hands on a donor card, if I want to see a pledge form an employee, a retiree, the Postal Service, because of their size, they have their own pledge form, right? So make sure you know the difference between sending the employee version with the retiree version, with the United States Postal Service version. Those are different. That CFC account we were talking about, because paper pledges, while we know that there are some offices where that's more efficient for them, we know that everybody's navigating over to the login.gov. I like it because it's just like when I pay my bills. If I want to see what my history of giving is, I can see what I gave last year, who I gave to. I can see 2 years ago, who did I give to, how much, right? It's just, if I want to change my mind on who to give to, there's a history of that. So we really encourage everyone to do the login.gov because paper pledges can also get lost. So make sure you're fluent on how to do that because you're gonna get lots of questions about that. There's double factor authenticity that got rolled out last year that trips people up a little bit. So just get acclimated to that because you're going to get some questions for that. This reference sheet is super helpful. I also just sometimes print some of those off or put it in a link when I send emails out so that they get access to that too, right? And also this online giving guide. But here you can see again, digital assets, all available. If I keep scrolling, look at all these things that are right there at your fingerprints. Fingerprints? How about fingertips? I can keep going. CFC briefing. You don't have to rewrite everything. There's already a template for leadership. There's a template for the emails. There's a template for everything. So make sure you're familiar with this. You want some campaign videos right here, right? You want some logos right here. I mean, you want there should be like I was gonna say PowerPoint template right there, right? QR code also right there. So lots and lots of resources just even on this page alone. If I tab through all these, training, host an event, handling paper pledges, all these, again, more resources for you. I'm going to go to cause areas. So we were talking about before in years past, week 1 would be designated towards environment. Week 2, education. Week 3, seniors. Week 4, health. Week 5, education, right? Very prescriptive. No more this year, giving you ultimate flexibility as you work with your accounts so that if they say, I'm running a 4-week campaign, and because we are part of DoD, we're going to prioritize 4 areas that are important to us as DoD. And so they'll tell you what are the 4. They can choose from any of the 4. I have some offices that run 3 in a week. That's a little much. You got to make sure you got really tight plans to be able to execute that well. But I do have some that will run 3 in a week because it's hard for them to choose. And they know that they have a diverse group that has diverse interests. They want to put all those causes in front of them. That's fine if you think it's feasible and you can manage it well. Otherwise, the way I think is simple is better. And then I can give access to them. If they want to learn more, we just put it in the links. It's optional rather than to try to promote all of them because it does make it a little tricky to do that well. But you can see all of this is already set up for you. So let's choose housing and shelter, right? Because as DoD, we know that sometimes we have housing insecured veterans. And so homelessness might be an issue. If I click on this is an area that they want to support. I can give them this here already. Like I said, you don't have to rewrite things. Here already is some language that you can use with a picture, right? And you can promote that. If you want to choose another one, right? All of these are here. If you want to come back to campaign workers, I want to go to events. Right? If you want to start even getting deeper into some of these topics, the events guide that we found under campaign workers, it's going to load for me eventually. There it is. All right. So you see that here's another 9-page guide, right? So if I wanted to do homelessness, I could now I could use it through the lens of an events. Does that mean now I look for charities that are specializing in addressing homelessness, right? So now you can start to work with your coordinators so that they can start to plan for the 4 weeks that they're going to do something, right? So planning ahead, choosing location, getting approval. Again, step-by-step guide that helps you and also them be successful. Publicizing the event, right? So again, if I chose the topic of homelessness, all I have to do is drop those in, and then I'll be able to provide something that's turnkey to be able to make sure that when that invitation to go out to participate, we'll have a higher rate of participation. So again, I know I'm going through this really fast, but we want to leave time for questions for you. But those are all available in these links. Here's the charities. So if you want a charity guest speaker, again, I'm just going to click. All of these hyperlinks are active. And so it will take me over to the charity request form. Just as an FYI, we are having some trouble with this right now. So you can submit, but just know that the charities aren't receiving them. There's some glitches we're trying to work through. Not the outreach coordinator, because we're the outreach coordinator. It's another contractor that's been contracted with OPM to do this side. So they're just running through some technical difficulties. But we've been notified that they're working on it. So, but I don't want you can still submit, just know there's a little bit of delay getting it to the charities. But, again, you'll want to walk through this. It's a new charity request, right? When I do that, now you can see this is key. Your requests have to be 14 days in advance. So make sure you miss that, because if you fall outside of that, your charity request won't get filled, because it takes a little bit of time on the back side to get this to the charities, monitor it to make sure that the requests are being filled. You know, this charity request is in competition with all the other charity requests that are coming in through the system. So it does take a little bit of time to fill, but you'll see there's questions. So again, you'll just want to go in there and you'll want to play with it to understand what this is. I sometimes will do this with my CFC coordinator because they don't know how to answer the questions. And so if you're submitting with incomplete information, that makes it hard to fill it. If you don't get done with it, look, there's a submit and a save. So I can save it and come back to it and finish it before I come back and then submit it. So again, you'll just want to familiarize yourself. The events CFC training that we're going to offer, we'll go into this into more detail. But that's a really important element of the events. So I just wanted to take a second to highlight that, and eventually my events guide will come back. So again, just take a look at that and study it a little bit more. Again, in the CFC training, they will dive into it a little bit further, but wanted to make sure y'all had some visibility to it. I love this page. It's just some brainstorming of just even some events that you could do in person, virtually, hybrid. And so those are good too. All right, I'm going to pause there because I rushed through a bunch of stuff. Let me see if you have any questions before we keep going and go back to the deck. All right, Cynthia, I see your hand up.
Yes, so I was just wondering, like you mentioned going over this information with your coordinators, but how do you do an in-person training if it's your coordinators and their key workers? Like, what would that look like? Because I've never done that. Like, what are you guys presenting? Is it like a PowerPoint, or can you just give me a general idea of what an in-person training would be like?
Yeah, and I'm actually going to go back to, so again, this is already all set up for you. So don't feel like you need to reinvent the wheel.
Allie,
Okay.
can I jump in real quick and help
Yeah,
you?
do that while I call up the website. Love it. Would love it if you did that, James.
So the marketing contractor actually took all 4 marketing sessions that we're holding and brought it all down into one deck. And the deck itself typically takes less than an hour to go through. It's a condensed version of all 4 of those topics. So there's a already done for you professional PowerPoint. It's got all the graphics, all the key points, and even on the bottom, if you go into presentation mode, it has exactly what words to say. So
Oh.
if you want, so it has all of that. Allie and I have done this so long, we don't read off of the slides. We just kind of go through the content. The one thing I would recommend if we do this, there's a couple sections on the PowerPoint that it wants you to customize. One, of course, the very last slide where it has your contact information. You know, you could download or we could email you the generic PowerPoint deck, and you could see what one looks like. I've already done a training for the 55th Wing down at Offutt about a week and a half ago. So I customized it with my contact information on the very last slide. And then I will just say on the training part, and I don't know if everybody's going to agree with me yet, but to me, the most confusing part for new coordinators and volunteers on the campaign, especially donors, is your 6-digit office code. And we train to that. And what I tell people is like, hey, here's your 6-digit code. And in offices like the VA, or more specifically like national parks, IRS, normally there's just one code for that office and it makes it really easy. The tricky ones are the DODs. So, you know, Thomas, that's a little trickier. And Heather, I think you've got some of the VA facilities. But the DOD ones are the most confusing because they have multiple codes and they've got multiple offices under one umbrella. But I always like putting the historical results up there so they can see what the last 2-3 years of pledge history was. And then I give them their 6-digit office code. Just make it really simple. And then a pro tip is on all the marketing that you share with a specific office, remind them to put the 6-digit code on all the marketing materials.
Yeah, exactly. And while James was speaking, so if you want to access it too, so again, go back to this campaign worker site we've been looking at. James, do you see?
Yep.
Okay. So what I did was I clicked on campaign manager training slides. It downloaded a deck, the deck that James is referring to. And then I went ahead and stuck it in chat for you. So I believe the version you got is an actual PowerPoint, not a PDF. So when James is talking about customizing it, adding a slide that shows the history, you should be able to do that because it's not a PDF. It was actually a PowerPoint, right, file. So you can customize it. You can hide some of the slides, delete it, right? But it gives you the template to start building out. Because I'm with James. I don't take my one deck and I use it at Fort Leonard Wood, at Scott Air Force Base, at NARA, at IRS. Like I actually customize each of my slides. Part of it is sometimes I'm only given 30 minutes. Sometimes I get an hour, right? So I have to customize my slides, but it is most important, as James said, they understand what those office codes are, because if they mess that up, they're going to work really, really hard to get those contributions and they're not going to get the credit for it. It will not show up on their reports, and that's frustrating. So that office code is super, super important. And then for them understanding the history, because many of them want to do just as well as they did in the past, if not better, right? So that office code is going to help them achieve that, but you got to make sure that they understand how important that office code is. James and I will both tell you, we get these random contributions that come from all over the country. We don't even know where they came from. And there's no way for us to trace it back so that it goes to that correct CFC zone. So, thank you very much for the bonus pledge. But we know it actually should have gone to another zone. We just don't know what to do with it. So, we're grateful. We say thank you, but as much as we can manage that so that their hard work shows up on that report in our zone, that's what we want to see.
Great. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Also, this interactive online training, again, you want to just take a peek at that and see this is all part of the resources there. All right, great question. More questions? All right, I'm gonna then go back to the slide deck and get that, try to finish that up. All right, so. Okay. So anyway, so encourage you to just explore that. Tons of resources. Here is the other thing now we're going to switch to. So if you can see towards the bottom where I'm circling, there are some key times during the campaign where for us as the account managers, for you as the LEs, we go in even deeper. And that's the starting strong, the Giving Tuesday, the finish strong. I would also add like mid-campaign. That's not on here. And then following up and just showing attitude of gratitude. James talked about that when he did the ECQ trading, but it's just really, really important that we remain grateful throughout the entire campaign. And so when you're coming up with your own personal playbook, James has a playbook, I have a playbook, every account manager has our own playbook, and kind of changes a little bit depending on the personality, how strong your CFC coordinator is, how strong their team is, maybe even the leadership of the LFCC. Your playbook changes a little bit. So, just as we do in sports, James loves sports, I love sports. I had two boys. We're both competitive by nature, James and I are. And so we have playbooks because we know that for one office, the play has to look differently than the play for another office. So you want to start constructing your playbook so that no matter what the scenario is, right, you kind of know which page of the playbook you're going to pull from. But as part of that, and James talked about this, you want to make sure that you're encouraging, you're inspiring trust, not only inspiring trust in the CFC, but with you as the LE, with us as MP May, with the leadership, with the team. And so that's really important because at the end of the day, you're asking people for their time, talent, or treasure. And so you don't want to break that trust with your donors. And so in everything that we do, we have to be very clear and intentional. And so that will help you to inspire trust. Instructive is also super important. I think 50% of my time, I am just giving instructions, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. It can be confusing, and there's a lot of people that we're trying to manage. So, you want to make sure that what you're giving is instructive for them so they can actually follow steps 1 through 10 and finish. I will tell you with that login.gov, the biggest thing I find in my zone is they get frustrated with it and they never finish submitting the pledge. So in those cases, I find it is super important for me to be instructive, because if we can't get them through that pledge, that online pledge, or even the paper, sometimes I see great frustration with even my individuals who can't even figure out the paper pledge form because it is a little confusing. And so if we can't get them through the completion of that pledge, our hard work is for naught. So being instructive is really, really important. Managing time, managing resources, managing all of the assets, that's really important too for our leaders. And then for mentoring, right? I like to role model. And so if I get frustrated by a situation and I show that, that's not mentoring, because I don't want them to be frustrated in their role. So I try to help them see ways to try to navigate through the situation sometimes. And James did it also excellently with the ECQs. It's just pulling down some of those principles from the ECQs that just helps to center you just for a second, right? And then you can figure out how to best address it and move forward. And so when you are putting your playbook together, pull from all these resources, these assets, but also the training that we've given you, particularly in leadership principles, because that's where it's all going to kind of come together. I love to cook, to give you a wonderful recipe and a wonderful plate, and they're going to just enjoy the meal. All right, so common plays on the field. So what James and I want to do for you now is we're just going to have a conversation between the two of us. And hopefully you learn from us, because these are some examples of things. I mean, you've both heard James has run, I think he's on year 8. I think I'm on year 6. Even before I joined MPMA, I was one of those charities that depended on CFC contributions. I was a nonprofit executive director for 15 years. We were a CFC charity that entire time, right? We depended on those contributions from the federal employees. And so James and I are just going to talk, and then we want you to listen, and then we'll open it up for questions again, because these could very well be some scenarios that you might run into. So James, I'll start off. So have you ever had a situation where you just keep reaching out to a CFC coordinator and then they just like don't respond?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, let me clarify the scenario, first of all, because right now we're recruiting like crazy and we're identifying who the coordinators are. All the coordinators and volunteers are very different, and we may have 300 in one zone. We may have 300 different coordinators we're communicating with. And I just got one yesterday. I looked at her email and it says, "Hey, only communicate with me on my cell phone." It's like, oh, okay. So we'll put that note in zone manager, or so that will help us. But we rely so heavily on email. That's going to be really challenging to do, and I'll let her know that. But what happens often is once you've identified a coordinator, then they just go dark, and there are some volunteers that just are not engaging. There were some I never talked to last year. We may have gotten one email in the beginning like, "Hey, I'm the coordinator." And then, you could just do the best that you can. That's all I would say. Don't be shocked, but some people are really engaging. They'll say thank you to every email you send them, or ask a qualifying question, or pick up the phone and call you. Those are great, because then they care and they're asking questions, and say lots of pleases and thank yous when that happens. But there are some coordinators who just won't respond or engage with you at all. And it's kind of normal, but you just want to keep pushing the information their way. And you can see in the pledge reports if you're getting pledges coming in from that office. Okay. And I always cross-reference both of those. And then normally it's about mid-campaign. If a coordinator is not responding and we're getting 0 pledges, we will send an email out. It's professionally written and nice, but it basically is saying, hey, I'm concerned because there's 0 pledges for your office. And it's a little bit of accountability, if you know what I mean. And I like copying in the leadership. So the leadership in the office knows. And in most cases, we've got the leadership emails, but we'll send an email like that to the coordinator. We'll send it and CC in the leadership. And sometimes that gets a response, in a positive way. We just want people to engage. Allie, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything James says. The other thing that I will frequently do, because James is right about copying that senior leadership. I also try to, as I'm doing training with the key workers, I actually try to be observant to see if there's others who seem to have a deeper interest in the CFC. And so what will happen then if I start to not hear from somebody, I will remember, I'll write in my notes like a key worker or two that seem to be a little bit more motivated. And I'll actually start to reach out to them to say, hey, has something happened to so-and-so? Like, has there been a change? Have they been deployed for a couple weeks and I just don't know? Can you make sure that the ball keeps rolling while this individual is gone? So that's one thing I've learned over the years too, is there's the leadership part, right? So sometimes you have to manage up and you have to manage down. So the copying leadership is managing up. The managing down is sometimes then also recognizing, I don't want to undermine what the CFC coordinator is doing, but we got to keep the ball rolling. And so if something has happened where they've been pulled away because of a big project or something and they're just not responding, that's cool. I understand this is a volunteer, but things have to keep going. So if there's a key worker that can kind of pick up the slack while the CFC coordinators got their attention on something else, that will help us have a more successful campaign. The next one, CFC coordinator disappears mid-campaign. So this is kind of a build out of what we were just talking about. So we can just address this one real quickly, but just know, even though some of them are really, really engaged at the beginning, you got to sustain that. So if they're like my Scott Air Force Base and we're going to do 15 weeks, it's like, it feels like sometimes we're in fits and starts, there's enthusiasm, it's concentrated here. And then it's like, where is everybody? And then we like come back again. And then are we going to be able to finish strong because we haven't been consistent in how we've been showing up? And so you'll just want to kind of observe that and see what other backup plans you might have, because I've had it happen more than once where somebody starts off really strong, doing really good engagement, and then they like just completely hands off, and whatever happens, happens. And it could be because they're frustrated or because they never had enough help to start with in the meantime, or never had enough help to start with from the beginning. But you just want to keep an eye on that because it is possible you may have some people disappear. So whatever you can bulk up towards the front will probably help you. I have a few that can go really strong towards the end, but many times they're just very tired. By that point, they're doing the best they can. It's the holidays. They're getting on the other side of the holidays because the campaign ends January 15th. But just know, that can also happen. So I try to do a lot of stuff up front because I know that that is possible towards the end. How about you, James, on that disappearing mid-campaign?
Yeah. So I wanted to chime in. Keep in mind, a lot of the accounts are small. Okay. They may be 30 people, 20 people, 10 people. A lot of people are remote. So there's no reason for them to run a 4-month campaign. So on the smaller offices like that, I would encourage them. It's what we call a micro campaign.
Yeah.
Hey, maybe consider just doing it for a month, or maybe consider doing it for a week. Heck, you could just have one physical event in the office, have a big potluck, all 30 people are there, and then that's your 1-day campaign.
Yep.
So that's okay. That's one creative way of getting the word out. So it's not a requirement that they have to market this for all 4 months. They basically, I would recommend to them, it's like, hey, let's pick and choose the dates. Like the Postal Service, we normally like starting strong and then ending, if you can, by Thanksgiving, because their busiest time of the year is in December, right? With all the holiday mailings, postage and so forth. So that happens all the time. And then again, it's if somebody does go, and with DOD, it's common. It's not common that they wouldn't communicate with you, but if somebody is going to get deployed, they would let you know ahead of time. And like, hey, I'm going to be gone all next month. I've self-appointed someone else in my team to kind of help take over, but sometimes that's happened. There was an issue with Ellsworth Air Force Base. The coordinator there didn't tell me he was being deployed, and he didn't get a backup. And we had just shipped a bunch of really cool water bottles up there, and it was kind of an inside joke. The poor guy's last name was Udall, and we jokingly said, "Oh, we got Udall," because he went MIA. And after we shipped up a bunch of marketing materials and really cool things, but we got him back that next year. But that's common. We just want to communicate if they are going to be deployed or something, or they're going to be on an extended vacation or leave of absence, let's get someone else in the campaign, if you can, identified, so we know how to communicate.
Yeah. Wow. I'm going to start using that. You got Udald. That's good.
Yeah.
What do
Send it
you
to
do,
Mike.
James? Like, so when you're looking at those reports, because they'll start to be issued October 1st. So we've got a member of the team where she just automates it. And so she just pushes all the data out to all of the offices, and you will get that on Tuesday of every week. So her name's Kathy Gallahan. She'll push that out. And so on Tuesday, when the coordinator checks their email, they will get the activity from the previous week so they can see how they're doing. But for me, sometimes, James, I'll see, okay, it's been like 2 weeks, 3 weeks now, and there's no change. And so for me, I call that freezing up. My pledges have just frozen. There's like nothing else going on. I may still be in communication with the coordinator. Coordinator seems to be responding still. So they haven't MIA'd me or oodled me, but the pledges are freezing. What do you do when you see pledges freezing?
So I like contacting them and then just saying, hey, we need to do something different. Everything's frozen, nothing's changed. The most impactful way to move the needle to get new pledges to show up on your report the next week is hold an event. I would encourage them, hey, let's do a potluck. Let's do a push-up contest. Let's do a pie in the face. Let's do some type of fun educational event for the CFC. You could even piggyback off something else that's already going on in your office that is driving lots of attendance. Just ask, hey, can I add a CFC table to the office, to that event? And normally the answer is yes. But normally, if you can get some type of physical event, that will unfreeze things and get the needle moving again.
Ah, I like that. Okay. No, that's a really good idea. Mine to add to that is, so when you see these examples of the reports, you'll see that there's like these little sub offices, units, within like a bigger one. The small offices, you won't see that, but on your larger accounts, you will. So for me, when I start to see pledges freeze, I'll actually go into the report with a fine tooth comb and I'll pull out from the history. So I'll look at like last year or the 2 years ago. Usually it's 2 years ago. And what I see is there's usually a variance. So like an office, if their key worker changes, one year that unit will do well, and then another year it won't. So if I can go back to like 2 years ago where there was a different key worker, I will actually talk with the CFC coordinator to say, hey, can you figure out who the CFC coordinator key worker is for that unit? Because that unit actually had a really strong performance 2 years ago. They had, I don't know, make this up, 20 donors. They brought in $10,000. But they're showing zero right now. Do you think you can dig in a little bit deeper, like on these 5, and see if you can identify who that is and just provide a little bit more support, guidance, coaching to them? Because we might then be able to move, shift some of the energy within your overall accounts. And so I found in the past, for me, that's a way for me to kind of unfreeze the overall pledges, because I can dig into some of those smaller those sub offices and pick up the activity in them, because it could just be that the key worker was struggling a little bit and didn't quite know what to do, was falling behind on emails. But if they get that extra attention from the CFC coordinators, that's all they needed.
Yeah.
So the number of donors decreased. So James, have you seen in any of your accounts where again, those reports will show the number of donors, but you're like mid-campaign, you're now in the second half, and they're only at 75% of the number of donors that they've had the year before. So as we try to anticipate how many donors they might have by the end of the campaign, it's possible there might be a shortfall. What are some strategies that you've used to try to get people to kind of pay attention to that and boost that?
Yeah, so honestly, it's extremely rare. I've rarely seen that happen. And if or when I did, it was normally like one, we went from 25 donors down to 24. The only way that typically would happen that I've seen would be when someone goes back in, they made a pledge, maybe they felt pressured or something, they made a pledge, and then you can go back in and make an adjustment to your pledge online at any time during the giving season. You can add to it. That's important to know. The old campaign, it used to be you could just make one pledge per year, but you can do multiple pledges. So, if somebody says, "Oh, I already gave," well, great. Well, why don't you consider giving 10 volunteer hours, or maybe another $10 to this new cause because we're holding an event. But sometimes the numbers might decrease if somebody went in and adjusted either their frequency, the amount, or just cancel their pledge in its entirety. But again, it's really rare.
Yeah, yeah. I think my piece to that, I'm glad to hear that for you. I unfortunately have not had that happen to me. So I do have some accounts where the donor count does decrease, sometimes like 10, 15%. And it could be just because people have been shuffled. So they've been relocated to another office in another part of the country. And so they're not in the gateway zone anymore. But one of my strategies then is I run the analytics in terms of what their goal is, how many individuals they've reported are in the office, and then I look at their performance in the past, and we do kind of like an average. So if we're saying, we want our average contribution to be in this range, so not only are we on a weekly basis looking at their pledged amount growing over time and their donors growing over time, but we're also working to try to move them from like a $25 average to a $50 average or something else. So like NGA, for example, I'll pick on them. NGA, the individuals who work there are in a higher salary range. And so that is a good example where when we've used this averaging, the CFC coordinators can actually manage their campaign a little bit differently because they know that they're working with folks who are in salaries of particular categories, right, of workers. And so they have more disposable income. So when they are doing their messaging, when they are doing their activities, it's geared more towards that audience because they have a high number of employees who've got those engineering backgrounds, those computing backgrounds, those project management backgrounds, and all those certifications. And so we're able to understand the data behind that. And even though we might have the number of donors who decrease, because our number of donors have actually decreased pretty heavily over the past 3 years, they're still raising more money than they've ever done because we're able to increase the average gift that they're getting from each of those donors. So that's another way to kind of mitigate if you see the number of donors decrease. Again, you kind of have to know your office and that background, but we've been able to use that strategy and help offset I don't want to say shrinking, but it is declining number of donors that we've seen at NGA. All right, the campaign is email only. I wanted to bring that up because James, I don't know about for you, but I kind of thought with some of my offices with every year coming past COVID that I would see less email campaigns. But I actually think I'm seeing even more because the federal government is in some cases saying, okay, we're only going to run an email campaign, and the person that's running it is out of Houston, and they're going to run it for 1/3 of the country. So all of these states are going to report to this one person in Houston, and it's going to be an email campaign. So I was wondering if you've had that experience and how you've tried to manage those CFC campaigns for those situations.
Yeah, I have, especially during COVID, you just had to adapt to that.
Mhm.
But whenever I hear from a coordinator who's based in another state than the office, I'll really plead with them. I say, look, I've done this a long time, pro tip, best practice. you really need to identify someone, ideally in leadership, someone popular, some extrovert physically in that office to help be your spokesperson, because the campaign is really a face-to-face campaign. Okay, it's hard. You can't just email them and expect them to understand and read the materials. Emails are way too easy to delete. So I like having a person, a physical person there that's identified as a key worker or a helper. And then I like trying to do some type of physical event as well, if you can. And
Yeah.
just say, you can still email everything out, just do what you're doing, but just do one or two of those things for me, please. Because you'll get much better results that way. And sometimes they'll agree and they'll do that. And sometimes they won't, and we just do the best that we can. But I think it's important to give them what's worked best in the past for everybody else.
Yeah. I actually love that idea. I've never tried that before, so I'm going to try that this year. Thank you for that, James. All right, so let's open it up. James and I can certainly provide more scenarios, but have you personally experienced, or are you anticipating any scenarios that you might run into that James or I could give you some ideas about?
Yeah, we'll open it up. Go ahead and unmute yourself if you want to chime in, but anything that you've run into thus far. Oh, go ahead, Jen. You're on mute, I think.
I'm good. I'm just doing multitasking. Sorry.
Okay, sorry. Allie, I'm going to chime in because I've had 9 cups of coffee and I can't sit still right now. But I think a good one that I want to point out is, especially right now when we're recruiting, someone might contact us back and say, oh, we're not doing the campaign this year. I'm not going to have a volunteer.
Yeah.
And, and that's just immediate conflict, and it's awkward and uncomfortable. There's a couple different things that you can do. One, you can involve the LFCC, and a federal leader could reach out directly. Terry Morgan in Zone 12 is really, really good at this. It's kind of where I've learned what to say and what to do, but he'll email them directly and saying, hey, it's, you really have to do this. This is a directive down from OPM. Here's a copy of the memorandum. Maybe you missed it, but here's a copy. You can read it. But you do need to appoint someone, and it's a perk through OPM. It's a benefit, and we need to give everybody the opportunity to learn about the CFC. And normally that's worked actually pretty well. It doesn't work all the time, but that's something I just wanted to bring up, that could happen. And then for all of you, some of you, like Jen, is very, very experienced and probably very self-sufficient. Some of you are new, but just reach back out to us if you hit a roadblock like that. We're all part of the same team, and we're happy to help. But
Those are good. Thanks, James.
Any other scenarios or questions that we can help you with?
I have one.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Cynthia.
So one of my accounts, I'm actually meeting with the coordinator this Friday, and Bruce was showing me their history for the last couple of years, and they had, I guess it goes back to 2021, I think the last 3 years. So like the 2 years they did really well, and then last year their donations dropped by 50%. So I'm wondering, how do you share that history with the coordinator in a way where they won't be like kind of I want them to still be positive and be like, oh, we can improve or something, instead of them having like a negative reaction to that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Does anybody want to chime in there? I know what I want to say on that. I mean, Jen Ward, you might be a great person to comment on that. Have you seen that? And what would you say in that scenario?
I would really just, your numbers last year were a little bit lower and not presented as such negative, and just encourage, here's the game plan to keep continuing on, and like barely mention that, and that way they're aware of it and they can ask questions, but kind of focus on, but we're gonna, you can only start increasing it from here. Like make a positive spin on it and not focus so much on the negative or make it such an issue.
You know,
Because regardless of last year's number, you still want to improve it.
Mhm. Okay.
I was thinking that the old scenario that a problem is an opportunity and work close. And so, yeah, you know, this is what it is, but this is a great opportunity for us to do this and this. You know, you take the fact and then you spin it around on where you can be positive and help them.
That's a great question, Cynthia. You know, we see that often.
Mhm.
And what I would typically try to say to them is, hey, we've had 2 really good years, you know, 22, 23 or 22, 21. Those were fantastic. I think we had a really engaged coordinator. They did lots of events. They involved leadership. They did everything that they were supposed to do. Last year, we didn't hold as many events there. And I think it's a great opportunity to rebound and get back up to where we were before or even grow it. I also like pointing out, to me, a key statistic is, hey, how many federal employees do we have in your office? You have 1,500 people in your office. You have 1,500, and yet only 7 people donated.
Mhm.
Okay, really? I mean, there should be a lot more than that. And I like kind of correlating the numbers in the office to, you know, the normal average. It used to be what, Allie, around 2%. You know, it's kind of declined. You know, the attitude of gratitude and grateful hearts. It seems like, you know, in the 50s and the 60s, people were a lot more giving back then. And, you know, and now today's economic climate, it feels like the many employees are kind of divided on their political views or religious views. It just seems like every year we run into something. You know, this year it's the election. There's excuses for people not to give. And that's why I love, you know, we've been faced with this all the time. It's like, hey, you know what? I understand times are tough and maybe you're living paycheck to paycheck, but you know what? You could donate your time. You know, donate your time. You know, most people in your office probably are already doing that. They're donating time to a CFC charity. We're just not getting credit for it.
Yeah.
There was a post office that kind of gave me this idea for the first time. In Zone 12, we did we signed up for one of the local charities, like to go paint a house and re-roof someone's house up in North Omaha. And they put a sign-up sheet, and they had a bunch of people that signed up, and they made it kind of like a fun work bonding environment where they took a bunch of their family members and friends, and they went up, they did a sign-up sheet. They all showed up and worked on a Saturday, but many hands makes light work. And they probably had like 25 people that showed up. And I told the coordinator, I go, just do a head count and make sure, you know, theoretically you should have 25 donation sheets, you know, do that for them. But we need to get credit for all those hours. You had a great idea. Let's make sure, because the hours, the pledge hours, do translate into a monetary figure that helps the report. It certainly helps the number of donors. And I think it always fluctuates every year, but it's approximately $20 an hour. You know, there's not real dollars traded, but you get pledge credit on there. So I like giving, you know, or just tell your story, you know, tell your story. Yeah, go ahead, Jen.
The other thing I did when I was in Alaska 2 years ago was compare it to coffee. So I asked everybody to give up $5 per pay period, 1 cup of coffee, and literally had little coffee posters put up, give up, you know, $5 for coffee can do this, this, and this. And we've got those numbers of what $5 can do, or $5 per pay period is $130 for the year, and posted those up everywhere so that it was a nominal, a very small nominal ask. And most people gave more than that, but those that were hesitant or didn't have a lot of money, $5 1 coffee isn't as much of a hurt, and they got more participation.
Yeah, that's a great point. And a statistic I always share during my face-to-face trainings with coordinators, I'll say just in the state of Nebraska alone, there's 30,000 federal employees. Okay, 30,000 federal employees. If every federal employee in the state of Nebraska just gave $1 per pay period, just $1, You can't even buy anything at the dollar store anymore because now it's the $2 store, right? Just
Right.
$1 a pay period. We would 3x our zone goal. We would triple our goal. I mean, it's pretty staggering when you look at the numbers. Anyway, those are some things that I've said and that hopefully help, motivate people to get involved and get engaged. So good comments.
Yeah, that's good.
And any other scenarios or any other questions that y'all have? Anything else that you've seen or want to share at this point in the campaign? Okay.
All right. Well, then let's, we just have a few more slides. And we are getting into the home stretch then. So James and I, are certainly here as part of ELCA to help you. And then you've got your zone managers who you're assigned to. And then I know for like Central and Southern, we do the Tuesday calls. So it's another way to get support in the work that you're doing. So we want to make sure that you 100% feel supported. All right, so let's do a little chat then. So now that you're kind of, starting to wrap up this intensive training you've had for LEs in the chat, what is the first thing you're going to do next as an LE?
Are you going to go, phew, no more training?
That would be a perfectly reasonable response. Actually, James, it's no more training, but now we're getting ready to do CFC training. So it's like,
Yeah,
yay, no more
one
this
thing to
training,
the other.
yay, new training.
Yeah, it's all, yep. So initial calls. Yeah, that's right. Make sure that all of our folks have the resources they need to succeed. Yep. Intro letter is done. Excellent.
Yeah,
It's really about reaching out and establishing contact
yeah,
and just see what they need at this stage.
yep, that's exactly right.
Good.
Yeah, I mean, you want to make sure they know who you are. You're another person on the team. You're not replacing any of the other folks who send them emails on that. You're just like additional hands, but you're going to be able to give them more attention, right? And so that's exciting that, I mean, I wish we had an LE for all the zones, but we don't. So the zones that have them are really fortunate. Gateway doesn't have one. So I'm jealous. I'm jealous all the way around. All right, second question for the chat today. How will you stay connected with your zone CFC activity? So there's going to be a few MP May sponsored activities. We'll have this kickoff that we'll do. I like it already. Jen Ward speaking my language. Then there's going to be these meetings that we have where, even a training is considered an activity. Then you're going to get to your sites and they're going to have activity. So you as LE have to stay plugged in at several different levels. The calendar is certainly a tool that you can use, but we want to make sure that you are aware of and can help publicize and promote. So what else will help you do that? One of them, if you aren't already getting it, MP May puts together and then sends out a monthly newsletter. And so at the end of each month, that newsletter kind of gives you a preview of what's happening in the next month. So for example, James and I do this roundtable that we'll start to have in October. We'll do it in October, November, and December. And so in this month's newsletter, there'll be something that says, hey, we're going to have these CFC roundtables hosted by ELCA. And so it's an opportunity for our coordinators to come together from all across the country and troubleshoot, right? Generate ideas. Maybe sometimes it's a little commiserating. We're not therapy sessions, right? But it's good to know that you're with people who are experiencing kind of the same things. And so we help each other out to navigate through that. But that's another way, where you can stay connected with what's going on with CFC activities. Other ideas. Okay, I see the flyers. Yep, kick off. Yep, there you go. Thank you, Jen. The flyers are a great way to not only push them out, but also keep yourself apprised. How often are you thinking about making your rounds? So making your rounds with contacting your coordinators, right? Jen saying weekly. Because that's also a way of how you can kind of keep a handle of the pulse.
Yeah.
Okay,
Weekly,
weekly.
good. So just a little bit of info for all of you. Allie and I, as account managers, on average, reach out on the phone to our assigned accounts once a week, and then also a personalized email once a week. And then that's on top of the automated emails that go out twice a week. There's once normally on Friday. The support specialist will send out like the cause of the week marketing messages or the newsletter for the next week. And then they also will send out, that's the Kathy Gallahan, the pledge report. Typically those pledge reports will go out like, here's the activity that's happened pledge wise for your office. And those are only going out if it's a confirmed coordinator for that office. So those emails go out. So theoretically, the coordinator is going to be getting 3 emails a week and 1 phone call a week. So just kind of keep that in mind. I personally like the idea of trying to call people just to check in if you can, if you've got the bandwidth for that.
Yeah, so you'll want to come up with some sort of, when we go back to your playbook,
Okay.
think about what you want that cadence to be. So, all right, let me move on to the next slide. All right, James, I'm going to let you start to take it away.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and just kind of wrap up with everybody, but thanks for going through the ELCA training. And again, I want to remind everybody, many hands makes light work. Back to the Sartorial quote, I love so much. Individually, we are just one drop, but together we're an ocean. And that goes right back to the point. You'll have a potential donor say, hey, my $1 doesn't matter. Yeah, it does matter. Just like that statistic I shared, if everybody in the zone donates $1 per pay period, then we're going to triple the pledge goal, So remember that, we're better together. And then unity, we need to lift each other up with encouragement. Don't forget the power of saying please and thank you. When people typically call us coordinator wise, it's something's wrong. Hey, this report's not working, or this is wrong, or this happened. What do I do? Hey, thanks for calling. Okay. And then always say thank you. So we want to be as positive as we can. We need one another because we're better together. I'm having fun already. I've never worked with LEs in the past. I'm kind of used to being a one-man band and doing the stuff by myself. It's amazing to work inside of a team. And as Allie's doing the content, I'm sending messages to Heather and to Thomas, multitasking, sending them little tidbits, but together we're better. We want to relate to one another and better understand one another. We need to trust each other. It's one of the key ELCA golden nuggets of leadership. I will remind everybody, please follow through on what you say you're going to do. And if you don't have the time or the bandwidth or the resources to get it done by the deadline, then renegotiate the deadline. You contact the other person that you made a promise to. You tell them that, hey, I can't get this to you by 5 o'clock. I'm still waiting for OPM to send the memo out, but you know what? I should have it to you by Friday. Okay. So we need to trust one another and follow through on what you say you're going to do, and then yield to one another and learn to delegate and share in the responsibility. We're just going to work together. So there's no titles or org chart as far as I'm concerned. You guys can call Allie and I for anything that you need, and we're all happy to help. We're all one part of a team.
That's right. Absolutely. All right. And so speaking of that, we just want to make sure you have our contact information. So again, I'll be following up with the slide deck. I'm going to drop those links for ELCA that we did this summer. So again, optional because it is many hours of videos, But if there's a topic in particular that you want to get a little more deeply trained in, James just does such an excellent job with running through the ECQs. So those would be the Tuesday sessions, and then the Thursday sessions I led, and those are more of the scenarios, the application. So it'll give you a chance to kind of see what the participants were exposed to, kind of thought through, because you're going to get some of that on the ground as well. But we'll get the decks to you, the links, and just for grins, I'll put the workbooks back up there again. At this point, you've probably gotten them like 500 times, but the workbooks are really good. And so, you know, that'll help you kind of pull out some additional things that we haven't been able to dive more deeply into in the crash course. But this is the first time James and I have been able to be part of the LE training. So we're really grateful to be with you as you get ready to launch. And, you know, we're just super excited on all the enhancements that you're going to help us be able to do out in the field and behind the scenes to make this year's campaign a success. So I thank you for saying yes. And I know some of you, you're full-time, some of you are part-time doing this LE work. But just as James says, you know, together we can do more. And our charities and the people, our citizens, need that. And so whatever it is that we can do that extra, I think it's gonna benefit everybody.
Yep. And one quick shout out. I love what Jeremy's background has, you know, identifying yourself as a CFC loan executive. Many of you may have already done that in your email signature line if you're allowed to do that. That's a great way to highlight that, or just the background and all the millions of video meetings that we have. You know, I've got my little CFC sign up there as well. So even though I normally have a puppy dog sitting over here distracting everybody. But thanks everybody. Thank you for being part of the program. Reach out anytime, and we're going to give you back a half hour of your day. And we'll see you soon. Thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you both for
Thank
the
you.
training.
Thanks, everyone.